Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Crit Hit Reviews with your host, Arlyeon. On today's episode, I'll be reviewing a game that's been gifted to me by our lovely viewer and D&D DM on Twitch, Sasha. Specifically, I'm talking about Thunder Lotus Studios Sundered, which adds a dash of Lovecraft and roguelike to the normal Metroidvania mix. Find out if I was crazy for it, or if my experiences left me feeling listless and gaunt. The basic premise to Sunder is that you're a lady named Esh crossing a desert/wasteland for reasons. Reasons that don't really matter all that much, given that less than a minute later you're getting a high-fived in the face by what is assumably an eldritch god, dying horribly, and then waking up in an abandoned ruin, which is populated by otherworldly abominations and mechanical monstrosities. Well, that and the ominous but totally your best friend Floey. Shiny Trapezo what's it? Which not only provides you the means of defending yourself from the creatures rampaging through the ravages of the ruins, but also serves as one of the few sources of lore for the player as you progress forward, coming in the form of both commentary and direction as you wander, as well as some rather ominous snippets of backstory about the world at large and the bosses whenever you come across one of the crystal rooms. There's also some small nuggets of lore/flavor text that can be found in the skill tree and perk list. In any case, I was actually rather fond of the way the game presented its story, as the way it unfolded more or less placed me in the same shoes as Esh, as I discovered what the heck was going on. The fact that it also integrated gameplay decisions into the story, and had the overall game culminate in very different ways depending on the major choice that it provides. Hello, multiple endings. And the fact that they were all very on-brand for a Lovecraft-influenced storyline was something I appreciated. But here I'm talking gameplay things, and I haven't even touched on the basics. So, first off, like I said in the intro, Sundered is a Metroidvania, one which sees you wandering across ruins, looting treasure, acquiring the abilities needed to navigate each location, and then knock off the creepy Lovecraft monster hanging out at the end. What's notable is that each of the game's locations defy attempts at mapping them in any sort of coherent fashion. Spooky. Real talk, this means that though there's notable locations which are fixed in size and place, by and large, the corridors that you'll be roaming through to get there are randomized, which keeps the exploration aspect feeling fairly fresh. This is then paired up with the game's swarm mechanic. Basically, as time passes, creatures unerringly roam towards your location, ranging from small clusters to seemingly endless murderous cuddle puddles of marauding monsters. What's more, they tend to spawn at the same rate whether you're standing still or moving, which adds a distinct sense of pressure to exploration given whenever you die, you're returned to the game's main hub to try and remap the locations that have newly reshuffled. And checking your map doesn't pause the game, so if you're lost it adds even more tension. Still, I was rather fond of the combat, even when the range of abilities at my disposal were stabbing, rolling, and hopping around like an idiot. In part, I think it was due to the variety that the finisher system provided for crowd control and flashiness. Plus, the aerial finishers remained my favorite for the amount of times that the upward one saved me by pulling me out of the way of the attack and even let me access stuff early. I still died like a chump, partly because you start out fairly fragile with little means of replenishing your health, though a regenerating shield does help, and also because enemy projectiles ignore cover. That's right, they're gonna shoot you through the walls, and it will hurt, but to be fair, most of the fault rests on the fact that I may have started my first run on hard mode without realizing that not only did it make the game's enemies more deadly, it also slowed down your experience progression. Which, yes, leveling and character customization. Basically, whenever you return to the hub, or die and get forcibly punted back there, you can spend shards, this game's form of experience/currency, which you earn from enemies, and fleshy treasure sacks as you wander the ruin/dungeon. And you can spend those to increase your stats, level things like armor, damage, or even utility options like better luck or more potions and better healing. That said, you can only spend them to a point, given that the size of your leveling tree is limited by the amount of abilities you've found on the world, ensuring that areas remain challenging until you've progressed further. But Arlie, I pretend I hear you saying, possibly out of loneliness-induced madness as I wander haunted halls. If you farm experience and max out your tree, won't you eventually end up the same as anyone else? Nope. That's what the perk system's for. See, as you progress through the game, you'll unlock perk slots, potentially up to 4, though possibly only up to 3, which enable you to equip perks, special passives which alter the powers of your characters, sometimes fairly drastically. Whilst many can be found from the game's various bosses and mini-boss-esque monsters, some require you to find their shrines hidden away in the map, at the end of caverns which send endless swarms of challenging creatures after you, until you actually escape that lair. And then there's the ability shrines themselves, which rest at the heart of the game's decision to resist or embrace. Remember those storyline options I mentioned? See, as you're progressing, you gradually find and acquire abilities, which are all wonderful because not only do they give you the ability to roam more, they tend to have some awesome combat utility. See, charge attacks, air dashes, double jumps, and a giant cannon, etc. What makes them especially interesting, however, is what occurs when you acquire an Elder Shard, either the whole ones from bosses or fragments from exploring and vanquishing mini-bosses. See, these shards give you the option of either going to the location of an ability shrine and corrupting it to mutate the ability, or to go and piss off your good buddy, the shimmering Trapezoid-What's-It, and incinerating them, which also provides you with a different upgrade option. Or you can just hoard them, I guess. All of these options do lead to different outcomes, though the decision to resist or embrace is permanent, given there's a limited number of shards per playthrough, and the game doesn't reward you for doing things halfway. Quick aside here, there also isn't a New Game Plus, so quickly tearing through the game with your maxed out character to see the other half of things isn't an option. Still, I overall enjoyed what the game had to offer, and the fact that it plays out a lot differently for how I navigated the world based on my choice to embrace or resist made it a worthwhile decision for me to play through again. I may also be guilty of completely ignoring the bosses until I got all the movement abilities before revisiting them, which helped a lot in my second playthrough given that whilst they both play out differently, the Embrace options have some extremely nice mobility options at their disposal. Maybe that's why the developers chose to have Embrace players be hounded by nightmarish shadow creatures that drop no experience and sort of creep on you. That said, if you're absolutely in need of more things to do, the game does have both a co-op mode to dinker around in, which has the players share their health, albeit with individual shields, and their ammo. Whilst I didn't get to play around in it for long, it was fairly entertaining, and the option for co-op players to teleport over to the main character is a useful way to keep people close by. And for those masochist players in the audience, there's also a bonus boss to find, provided you solve 3 distinct puzzles squirreled away on the map. Do that, and slay this optional boss, and you'll be gifted with a unique Tier 4 perk, which is higher than the traditional Tier 3 cap for perks, which drastically powers up all the enemies you encounter, as well as the game's main bosses. Like, expect to get punched in the next week and obliterated in 2 to 3 clean hits if you're not careful. That said, if you can take down the empowered bosses and enemies, it enables you to find other Tier 4 perks to ascend to a whole new level of ridiculous power. And if you absolutely feel the need to suffer, there's also an insane difficulty after hard, which just amplifies everything that hard was. No, not for me. Not for me. But it's there. On the sound side of things, I am immensely fond of Sundered because, by and large, a lot of it serves a purpose. I mean, yes, the ambient soundtrack is fairly nice in and of itself, but the fact that things would shift and become ominous as a horde of creatures approached was a lovely use of sound cues to invoke dread. Even when there wasn't an immense amount of carnivorous cannon fodder rushing to swarm me into oblivion, you could still count on the sound effects to signal when a few creatures were approaching or already there, from the sound of their movements or attacks. And I mean, not all the sound cues were dread-inspiring either, given the treasure sacks have a sort of shimmering noise that grew more distinct the closer you were to them, and which served as motivation for me to hurl myself headlong into danger to find them. This might have killed me a few times. But even beyond those tracks, which serve a distinct gameplay purpose, the quality of the music was fantastic. The boss themes and the way they evolved as the fights intensified are delightfully epic, and I couldn't help but appreciate the Trapezoid-Who's-Its dialogue. Yes, it's a fake language, but there's moments where it intersects with actual language that caught my attention, and it's quite fluid. I think I lingered on Haresh as the word for non-believers at one point, and was like, huh, I wonder if they used heretics as the etymology for that word. Anyways, right, I'll stop nerding out here, move on. Visually, I also really like Sundered. Like, the character animations are fun, as you gain upgrades and abilities, the changes are notable. I also really enjoyed the animations for the enemies, as they were disconcerting and intimidating at first from the way some of them moved. And creepy. Though the fact that some of them are essentially recolors of each other is noticeable. Nonetheless, I had absolutely no complaints for the absurd shenanigans that Thunder Lotus unleashed with the bosses and all their attacks. It was impressive and intimidating on a scale that felt altogether fitting given that they developed Jotun. Anyway, I guess TLDR, or would it be DL, I really liked Sunder. Like, I binged the sucker to get it down, tinkered around with it on stream, tinkered around with it online, and then proceeded to discuss merits of its storytelling and foreshadowing with a bunch of friends afterwards. Like, it genuinely resonated with me a fair bit. I just enjoyed its take on the Lovecraftian mythos. I loved the way that it paid homage to some of the original stories, and I had a lot of fun with the gradually evolving skills and abilities, and the way they kept things very fresh on the next playthrough was great. No, I didn't feel compelled to dive into insane mode, because it sounded absolutely grueling, but yes, I did try my hand against and beat all of the Eradicator variants of the bosses because I was that curious and enjoyed Sundered as much as I did. It's solid mechanically, story-wise, art-wise, and music-wise. In my book, it is a crit hit, and I definitely recommend picking this up. Anywho, that's a wrap, so I'd like to thank you folks for both tuning in and sticking till the end. Whether you agree or disagree with my thoughts, I'd love to hear you folks in the comments. For those interested in more indie reviews or interviews with developers, feel free to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you get notified when we have a new release. Lastly, join our cozy little Discord. There's a link in the description and the banner so you can become one of the valued members of our community. Anywho, I'll catch you on the next episode of Crit Hit. Take care till then, folks.